Right.
Sorry,
Spot
Brian.
that full beat. I thought that,
You come up next.
well, thank you. Jason Waters, city engineer of the city of Sherwood. I brought Doug Gresham. He's the project engineer for Clean Water Services. I described that as kind of the equivalent of the city engineer there.
Also, it's great that there's someone assigned to the project within Water Services.
There is. Yeah, so we have bodies here. Why are we here? The purpose of the presentation, well, this project's kind of been on hold since early 2020. We did the feasibility and alignment study that was completed and wrapped up at the end of 2019 into 2020. And then, as we know, the world changed then, and resources and things and whatnot. And here we are today. We'd also like to host an open house in April for this project. So we'd like to kind of give you guys an update on everything and let you know where we're at before we go do the open house. April 13th at Middleton Elementary is where we're planning to do it. Or we could do it here, but right as of now, we're just gonna, that's the same location as the open house in 2019 for this project. Also, we're gonna present the remaining work in the schedule and let you know when we'll be back here. It's not gonna include much financial information because we don't have detailed cost estimates, and we'll be back, Craig Sheldon and I, for the CIP plan, presenting the high level numbers for this project.
The numbers will, from my perspective, the numbers will sort out. We want the project done.
Yes, so that's what we're here to let you know. Thought the best way to do that, looking at this, pick it up where we left it February 19th of 2019, and we can just start the slideshow here. And this was presented to, I think, most of you guys that are on the council, a couple new councilors, by Bob Galati. And here we are. These are the things he went over. Response to active development, high school development, follows Cedar Creek and Goose Creek. So where we're at now is we're at the 30 to 60% design phase. And we're going to show you the current proposed alignment tonight, but AKS is actively working on the design. And so there's some slight changes that are being made to that we're going to present at the open house. The sewer actually serves a dry line at the high school. If you didn't know that, that's on a temporary pump station right now. It pumps to the northeast up to the adjacent subdivision. So this project will ultimately end at that dry line and hook that up. So this is critical to getting the high school off of a pump system right now. And the modeling's been done for this project.
Why is that critical to get it off of a pump system? Is it just cheaper? Or?
The whole CWS doesn't, per their standards, doesn't allow private pump stations. And that was an agreement.
It was a temporary fix.
Temporary
So
fix.
I expect it to be a 2-year fix.
Okay,
Lower cost, lower maintenance long term.
okay, great.
Risk of the problem.
Modeling's done, and the exact pipe size, I don't know if you guys locked that in yet.
I think we're pretty close on that.
And that will be used to determine kind of the financing and cost splits.
So why would it be anything other than 15? Isn't it 15 what we already built to the edge?
Yeah, but you have to, sometimes the slopes demand that you make the pipe bigger so you get things to flow through it
Oh, okay.
correctly.
All right.
So example would be 3rd Street, we did a sewer project here, and that had to be 24 inches just because it was so flat, just to get flow on it.
Okay. Is there any risk that that existing 15-inch will be too small?
It will in the long term. It does not have the capacity for the full growth of the area. So it will be a future project to upsize the existing Cedar trunk line.
Because that
So you mean-
15-inch stretch, it continues to be that size, right?
Yeah, that was, I had a question that was going to follow up about just letting everybody know when that threshold would be. And if that's just the high school coming online, I think that would,
Yeah, that's a long-term
Yeah.
upgrade.
so full build out is why we need the full build out. I'm just guessing that when the high school comes online, the project will reach capacity. Yeah, that kind I'm just wondering what development. Let's just. All right. So this is the map that was presented. This is the approximate alignment from 2019. Red line here is the project. Start here. Goes through Brookman up here, and this is the dry line that was installed over here at the high school. which is just sitting there right now, and they're pumping up this subdivision up here. This is a change to that route that they looked at for 30% design, so this is the preliminary route that's presented during the feasibility study. And this is actually being proposed because it's follows vegetated corridor in the stream, is that right?
That's one reason, and then there was some conflicts with septic systems and wells, and things along the way that were avoiding.
And this is the overall, probably 29% alignment since they just submitted 30% plans. This is where the project begins. This actually is don't confuse you, this is Brookman here, not, this is developed, this is Brookman, this is county. So portions of this project actually go into the county. That's why CWS is handling the project, because it's quite complex.
Yeah, but the beginning point of the project is actually some of it's already been built by a developer,
Yes,
so
yes.
that's why.
So it's picking up at the end of the Middlebrook subdivision
Yeah.
section.
Here's the schedule, and I'm not putting this on here, so you have to read it. This is just to show you the design work that's been completed on this project, because I think this work session should have occurred last summer, last fall, just to let you guys know the project was kicking back off, since we hadn't been here since 2019. So this is all the design work that's been completed since then. And this is all the remaining work that's ahead of us here over the next 6 to 8 months or so. So this is the last time we were here in 2019. These are all the things that we said we'd get done. The feasibility study is done. There's still some easements that need to be negotiated, so there's a little bit of right-of-way acquisition work that remains. This is the current phase that we're in. Development of construction bid set and permitting. And Doug, can you maybe go over kind of a timeframe for when this work will be completed?
Sure, so right now, we've just completed the 30% plan set, which means we basically nailed down more or less the alignment of the sewer in detail. Over the next few months, starting this month, we'll be going to Washington County to begin the land use process. Parts that are outside of City of Sherwood in Washington County, we're going to go through the land use process. And working on wetland permitting and doing, part of that, we have to do the archaeological and all the environmental studies. So all those are going underway right now. So we'll be submitting for land use permits, submitting for wetland impact permits. We'll be completing the archaeological study and starting the process of going through land use with Washington County. And anticipating this summer, we will be at 60%, which is when we'll start finalizing the legal descriptions of easement acquisitions. And hopefully, if all goes well, we will be completing the plans early this fall with the winter bid for construction beginning spring of 2024.
Assuming we figure the funding out, which is what we'll be back to discuss with you guys about this project and how we're gonna fund it in about six months, once we get between 60 to 90%, is that, I think?
Yeah, even a little sooner than that probably, but
So we'll present the project financials at another work session, but kind of what we're thinking, or
Yeah, not here.
What does CIP stand for again?
the capital improvement
Okay.
plan, I think, or capital improvement program,
Okay.
or capital improvement project. We usually just CIP plan is.
I
kind
know,
of
I've
what
heard
we-
it, I've heard it a bunch and I can't remember.
I don't think
All right.
we've honed in.
So the limitations that you've described, maybe I'm jumping ahead, of when you can do stream corridor in water work and when you can deal with removing trees. So, because of migratory bird and stuff like that. So are you planning appropriately, to optimize those windows
yes,
to not cause further delays? Because
yes.
not your fault, but we are only 2 years behind or 3 years behind on this project.
Yes, we are working through those issues as we speak on figuring it out. There are large sections of the project that don't have tree impacts, but there are some that do. So yeah, we'll be looking at that. Ideally, you want to remove trees outside of the migratory bird window. In those times, there's no extra steps to do. They're not nesting at that time. Adult birds are not protected. It's the nests and any eggs or baby birds in there. So if you do end up, you can remove them at other times of the year. It's a lot more complicated process. You have to plow and make sure that there's no nesting birds in the tree. Ideally, we want to avoid that. And most of our wetland impacts are not the kind that would be considered in water or in the stream or isolated wetlands on either side. So we should have some flexibility with those. So, but it's definitely on the schedule. We're working towards resolving those.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys do early tree removal contracts, but I think that's something.
It's one of the things we're considering and looking at. And then the exact length of duration of construction. I know when the first phase of the trunk line was built with the Middlebrook subdivision, it was some real slow going construction, difficult conditions, a lot of groundwater, a lot of trench stability issues. So we're not exactly sure how long it's going to take to construct. We kind of have to wait and see what kind of soil conditions we hit once we get going. So.
And then you mentioned that this would be good for a little while. So if Sherwood West comes in though, are we gonna have to dig all this up and put in?
This section of the new construction Brookman trunk line is sized for the ultimate build out.
Okay,
But the existing Cedar Creek trunk was not built with anticipation of it connecting all the way
the
around.
one that connects in at the roundabout
Uh,
or the one that connects, here, go back to the.
where we connect,
Goes through Stumbles Park,
go back one or two more, the blue line.
Yeah,
but it's not just a blue line.
This is what Doug's talking about here, and this news
Yeah.
to me too. I'm interested. Okay, so this.
But it's not just that line,
Potentially be.
because that connects over up there.
right, but I guess what I'm saying, so when Sherwood West gets built in, we're not gonna have to redig up this red line.
No, that's been accounted for in the studies
Okay.
from Sherwood West.
So we may have to dig up the blue line
And,
and,
and north.
yeah, okay, perfect, all right.
I think North's good. I think you guys did a upsizing project on that.
I'm
Anyways,
not-
That's all
I
right,
think-
different
I think-
project.
Different project.
Yeah.
I just didn't want, because I feel like if that was my land and you were coming and digging it up, and then you came back in 5 years to dig it up again. I'd be
Yeah, the
really
red line-
disappointed.
Where it connects to the blue line is a 21-inch line. And
Okay,
it's 21 and then it drops down to a 12 when you get all the way to the high school. So it's already sized for that ultimate growth. So the 21 connects to the 15. And then down the road, I think the 15 will need to get upsized to a 24. But I'd have to verify that. I think that's in the long-term master plan.
Makes sense.
And that'll have a trigger with
That didn't make sense that it was built only to 15 originally, obviously.
I can't account for that.
Yeah, so there'll be a trigger of a certain number of housing units.
And so
We'll get that.
when you're looking at this, the sizing,
The
Are
new
you-
part.
the new part, what part of Washington and Yamhill County or Clackamas, the economic. Ultimately, what can that serve? So if the UGB expands beyond Sherwood West, beyond the Brookman, how much more land can that handle? I.e., or is it this 21, whatever we're sizing the red one at? Dig once, put in a bigger pipe.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the exact sizing, but it's sized to include Sherwood West, Sherwood South, and Brookman.
Right, so if you could come back with just the answer as to
Yeah, I'm
how
pretty
much,
sure the
how much
answer.
more could it handle?
I know Amy Brown mentioned this before. I don't think they can upsize it for anything that's not in the UGB growth areas.
So,
but we could pay for it separately, couldn't we?
so is that a state law? Is that a Clean Water Services policy? I want to know that.
Okay,
Yeah.
for sure.
There are limits to the topography as well for what
Yeah,
areas.
I think there's some stuff up We'll follow
I
up
don't
with that.
disagree. I mean, it's just,
What we're trying to say is we want to be future looking,
Sure.
but we don't want to get a 40-inch pipe and say, oh yeah, that's too big.
Yeah.
So-
You kind of
Give us
came down the
some-
pipe selection and it's 2 inches that we got out, right?
Yeah.
usually the price difference between a 18 and a 20 inch, or whatever, is not much.
Yeah, we'll follow up with that for sure.
But yeah, it has a forward-looking basin. There are some areas to the south that ultimately will need another trunk line, a spur trunk line that comes off the other side of
Yeah.
Cedar Creek. But it's sized to build out those additional.
Awesome. So I'd love to see a map shaded as to the territory of Oregon that this line can serve.
Well, it depends on how dense we zone it, right?
Well, or density gets built.
Doesn't matter how much we zone it.
That's right.
That's a good
You could put, 20 units on one.
Yeah, we definitely had to make some assumptions because there is no zoning for Sherwood South at this time.
Well, and if you have you're now allowed by law that if you have a lot, you can put a flex on it,
Sure.
whatever size, so you have to assume. So it should be a pretty big, quite more sewage.
That's, I mean, fair enough. I should follow up on that, so.
Yeah.
The next open house, we had an open house in 2019, right after we did the work session. And we're gonna do a similar open house on April 13th is what we're proposing. If anyone feels like we should do it at City Hall, I think we're still open to doing that.
What would be the advantage to doing it off-site?
Closer to the area, we could probably piggyback with the Sherwood West stuff on the reload and the broken and present things like that, so that's what they were selecting, but I mean, I had some thoughts on maybe here would be good too, so we'll let you know the final destination for that, but that was the thought is we could piggyback on all the work that's been done over in that area and get more interest because we've told planning and they're interested in having some.
Council prefers to have an open house in a specific location. Now's a chance to say it, so.
I like the idea of doing it closer to the people,
Yeah, I think Middleton's fine because that's the service area.
especially if there's gonna be a Sherwood West open house. This doesn't feel like its own.
Kiosk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to commit here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you gonna be manning the kids?
Yes, of course.
I'll come and grow.
So, just again, as we close it out, we'll be back for a detailed work session. I'd say in about 6 months and we'll check in with you and that's where we'll start getting into the costs and the splits and the things that we're all thinking about. That's what I had to present to you guys tonight.
So again, I haven't gone through the budgeting process, but I feel like we gotta get our budget out by June, don't we?
Oh, yeah, I mentioned that. Craig Shelby and I will be to present the high level assumptions for
Okay.
the budget.
Right,
Yeah.
I just don't wanna wait 6 months to go,
No,
"Oh,
you-
we don't have money till next year now.
We're not gonna be spending any construction money on this in the next budget
For a
cycle.
long time. So,
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm gonna say before construction money, I know we spend a lot of money on consultants and
Site.
studies and designs and
So we'll be back with you one time for the CIP plan and then we'll do the
Yeah.
detailed finances on this project in fall.
Okay,
This will be a cost share between the city and Clean Water Services.
Like 10% to the city, 90% to the.
Yeah, that's what I heard, that's what I'm expecting.
Something like that.
0. But we have some assumptions for the budget that we'll present with the CIP plan.
and if their assumptions are wrong, then there'll be a supplemental.
All right.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you very
Any
much.
questions? More questions? Awesome, appreciate you turning that whole line.
Yeah, no problem.
Hey, you probably live in Sherwood anyways.
I don't live in Sherwood. In fact, the first time I've been to downtown Sherwood.
Really? What?
give you a tour.
We'll
What?
come back more.
I was gonna say, we gotta get Bruce to give you a tour, because you're the open business.
Library, I walked into the library, and the architecture, the big open room, it's pretty cool.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
After we get this pipe in, you're gonna wanna move to Sherwood West. I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay. Next is.
Here. It's you.
Oh, that's
Right. That's right.
I'm like, oh.
Some surprise.
I knew yours was somewhere.
Awesome. So next to the second of three things we're talking about, is, public contracting code. Riveting. I mean, this is why,
And this is interesting that he pulled this one like right out in this first.
oh, I'm excited about it, but it's like, you know, it's not, people don't run, I want to update public contracting code, but it's important, and this is why. Go ahead.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of background first before we get into
I know
the
what.
contracting code. When I interviewed here, you asked me what I was gonna do in my first year, so I'm one upping it and trying to get it done right after my first month. That's nice. So I said HB 3115, which is the camping stuff that we're gonna talk about in the next couple of sessions, and then updates to the public contracting code. So a little bit of, that's our roadmap. We're gonna talk about background, a little bit of policy discussion, and I just want to get your input on this, because I think at its root it is policy. So Oregon law requires competition for just about everything. So if a contract is under $10,000, you can just go out and buy it, right? You can put it on a credit card. If it's above $10,000, there's either intermediate procurement, right? Or there is the formal procurement policies, which is RFPs, invitations to bid, things like that. So in our code specifically, we'll get into this in a little bit, but we limit that to $5,000. So if it's above $5,000, then there's this whole process that has to come into play. So cities, obviously, ORS 279A.065 gives cities the authority to implement their own policies under sort of a home rule type doctrine. And Sherwood has,
Wait, the state doesn't let us do anything home rule anymore.
well, there is, we'll get into that in a little bit, but there is a refuge in the public contracting laws here for cities. So we talked a little bit about statutory limits. The background here, Oregon passed HB 2341, 2003. It really overhauled the public contracting code. So it gutted ORS 279. And it gave us 279A, B, and C. So we took one statute and turned it into three really long statutes, right? So with that being said, as a response to that, in 2005, we have Sherwood's policy that they came up with, and that's the last time it's been touched. So we haven't messed with it at all. It creates, I think, frankly, I think there's some legal liability that we need to address in that I don't think has come up yet, but I think we need to work through some of those things. I'll go over them.
I haven't looked at it in a long time.
Yeah, and so I will say in 2018, we did come back and it was helpful, and we said, hey, the city manager has the authority to execute contracts in the amount of $100,000 or less. And that's pretty standard across the board. Wilsonville was the same way. Anything above $100,000, as you know, has to come through you. So that's where it's at, and that is not, randomly enough, that is not in our contracting code. That's a random resolution we passed, and it's just a Word document that says Exhibit A. So I think there's some room for change here. So like I said, we haven't updated our contracting code since 2005, and there's myriad changes, as you can see. You know, procurement law in Oregon has been updated many times since then. Most significantly in 2013. So this is really the meat of the conversation. This is not an all-inclusive list, but there's some considerations here that we can talk through. You know, one of the things that I would ask if it's unnecessarily bureaucratic or burdensome is requiring the city manager to interview anybody that has a contract above $25,000 that we want to potentially look at, and then requiring them to do a second interview. And it says in the definition, city manager or designee, but there's nothing specific to how a designee is appointed, when, you know, what qualifications they need to have. I mean, theoretically, the city manager could pick anybody from, you know, the most junior employee in the city to do this. So I think it would be helpful to have some guidance as to what that looks like. Most cities have, you know, a city manager. In Wilsonville, it was the city attorney. The mayor can sign contracts for the city. So there's a list of folks that probably should be set forth in the model ordinance and that LOC has did a pretty good job of that. So that's one thing, with respect to that. Advertising with the LOC, I looked at that this week just to see if anybody's actually still doing that. And the city of Culver has a procurement on there. I will say, I'm not sure what City of Sherwood's website was like in 2005, but most cities now post it on there. What's it? I would imagine that too. I'm sorry.
So you mean our code says that?
Yeah.
But we're not, obviously not doing that.
Well, I don't want to speak for the city. I've been here a month. I'm not sure if we're doing that all the time or we're not doing that all the time. But I think that's part of, I think what could be some legal liability is I would recommend that we have a code that we understand and that we can all follow. And that makes sense. And so that's another thing. It's like, I'm not sure if the LOC charges a fee for that or not. I don't know. But if they are, I mean, that's something that we don't need to be paying. We can do this in the paper and put it on our own website and it would be fine. So formal procurement for contracts over $25,000. I mean, I haven't seen that before.
So just ask staff, anybody that remembers, I remember, I was around, what the value or reason we would advertise the LLC. And if there is a fee, if there's no fee, then,
It can be a suggestion.
saying, an option.
Yep.
Maybe shopping, first of all. Anyway,
There's a myriad of member benefits.
okay.
Very well could be. So we'll have that conversation. And then, formal procurement contracts, you don't have to do in state law for just general goods and services contracts. Formal procurement is not required unless the amount is over $150,000. And so most stuff has increased in price significantly since 2003 and 2005. So without wading into the policy, there is room to adjust here if you all choose to do
Do you
that.
know if we've been following that?
No, we haven't changed it since '05.
I know,
Oh,
but
yeah,
have we been,
back then it was low.
have we been doing the formal procurement for contracts over 25?
I think that we have. And I don't think Craig's here tonight, but Craig is pretty good about this stuff. So I've had some conversations with him. And so I think it's just, there's policy decisions to be made, but I also, as I said, I think there's room to adjust for, the significant economic changes that have occurred in our state since 2003. And then the small procurements, raising that from 5 to 10 may make sense. When we did enact this in 2005, my understanding is the city had between 65 and 70 employees. And so it may have made a little bit more sense, as well as, running all the interviews through the city manager at that point. But as we grow and as we change, certainly our ordinances and our code should change along with us and progress along with us. So I sent you all yesterday the LOC's model ordinance, and I think that there's some changes that we would need to make to that. Specifically, I would want to see change order language put in that to regulate how we do construction contracts, and I would want Craig to give his input there. And there is model rules around that. And then I would also say this shifts from policy into more of a legal recommendation. I think it would be a healthy thing for the city attorney's office to give training at least on an annual basis to risks involved in contracts and procurement policies. I just, at some point, it does make sense to have staff aware of what the law is, what changes have come to the law, and the process that we need to follow. So I would recommend that we do that at least once a year, and we would need to put that in our code.
As well as review our public contracting code on an annual or every other year. I mean, the state literally has altered their code almost a dozen times since.
So that is a perfect segue into what I was going to say next, and that is that the order by statutes actually require contracting agencies, which are you all, contracting boards, which are you all, to review every single year the changes that the Oregon Attorney General makes to the public contracting model rules. And it doesn't appear that that's been done since 2005. So I think we're in a place now where it would be a healthy thing to do to get in there. And so what I did was I just sent this model ordinance. And until I talked with you all this work session, I didn't want to take the liberty of going through and redlining and spending hours changing this. I think to the extent I have some buy-in from council and this is something you want to pursue, I would recommend that I sit down with senior staff and have conversations with them about what specifically in their departments would be helpful for productivity, come back, send you all some red line changes to this model ordinance, and then have a separate work session on it to go through this.
Thoughts?
When you say the formal procurement for contracts over 25, that's like the RFP.
Correct.
So short of doing that, what would they do? If, let's say that becomes 100,000 or 150,000, what process do you do under that? Just get bids and pick what you want?
It's a really good question, yeah. So, and I'm sorry, I should have covered this in the intermediate procurement process because that's what it would be called. So the state requires you, if a contract is between $10,000 and $150,000, to get 3 quotes. So that can be pick up the phone, make a phone call, that can be send an email, send a text message, and you're required, whoever the person getting those quotes is required to document that in writing. Typically, I've said, hey, have a Word document, even write it on a piece of note paper if that's what you want to do. Just paper the file with it so we can see if there's ever an issue that you did what was required under the law. So here, I think that process is, if you're under 25,000, you can do it. Intermediate, I can't remember off the top of my head. But certainly there's room for some.
Because there's a lot of work that goes into a formal one, the RFP.
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Right, but even, that's why I say, bump, I think it's a no-brainer, we gotta bump that up. From the 25,000 is my feeling, because even doing the unofficial bids is still a fair amount of work, and are you gonna do it for a tiny little piece, I feel like that's gonna prevent us from actually getting business done, so, anyway, that's my feeling on that.
The other thing that I would want to bring back to you all is our protest procedures. So if somebody doesn't if a contractor doesn't like the, maybe other contractor we picked, they have a right under the model rules and under state law to protest that. Cities have the right to delineate what that protest is. So I don't know if you've all had a chance to go through these, but there's some pretty good stuff in here. So generally speaking, the model rules require that if a contractor doesn't like what, who the city has chosen to do this, and they feel like their selection has been unfair, they have 7 days to contact the city manager. The city manager then forwards it to city council, and they have to get in front of city council. The city council makes a decision, and that person then has 15 days. If we do a default, which we're doing right now, there's a substantial amount of time more that these folks could have to go to circuit court if they wanted to, there's a lot more room for legal maneuver.
Clearly needs to be updated. We need to
I'm in
review.
favor.
My feeling on that though is I don't want it to, I would like there to be an appeals. I don't need it to be 6 months, right? We've got to be able to explain what it is and not be dragged down by people that are just trying to slow down the.
Generally speaking, following the LOC model ordinance and making some adjustments based on staff
Recommendations.
input
Yeah.
and perspective. Several of them have been doing this for a long time and have great insight to be able to provide. And they come back with a red line version of work session.
Yeah, and I haven't talked to Kristen about this, but I'd like to bring Craig and Kristen back and we can have conversations about what this look like and kind of the reasons for it. This doesn't need to just be a silo at city attorney's
Oh,
office.
if you did, you would not be in the city attorney very long. You need to involve like I said, as you
People are
said
using
as
it.
much, so.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the small procurement 5,000 caught some new staff off guard. When I had asked on something like, well, the state law says 10,000, I'm like, yeah, but ours says 5, like, oh.
And that is creating some liability because to the extent that we don't follow that, people can sue us in court and recover attorney fees. So, I mean, it is important that we have a policy that makes sense and that staff knows and that we follow.
Get it.
All right,
Awesome.
that's all I have.
Do you have enough guidance from?
I think so.
He's gonna come back and bring it to us for
Yeah.
input.
I know, he just was, he came here looking for the thumbs up or direction or something.
Yeah,
Thumbs
okay.
up, make a request to change it.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor as well.
Awesome.
Go ahead, go make it, bring us back the results.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Kristen.
Yeah, so next up, we're gonna talk about the art for the pedestrian bridge. Shanda Hall is here this evening. She's gonna run the PowerPoint. And really talk about the information we gathered at the Cultural Arts Commission meeting. They've reviewed the proposals or had discussions twice. So we want to share with you their recommendations and really just check in with all of you and make sure that they're headed down the right path. And that everybody's on board with the direction that we're going, and if we receive the thumbs up, keep moving forward, that's what we'll do. And if there's feedback, we need to slow down, of course, that's what we'll do, so.
Thanks, Kristen. Nice to see all of you. Kristen gave you a good background, and I just wanted to let you know what the conversations have been like at the Cultural Arts Commission. We're very excited about possibilities of pedestrian bridge art. So we know that's been a big dream, of that beautiful pedestrian bridge connecting east and west side. So we were asked by KPFF to identify some areas of focus and just encase the whole thing with art. I know that would be fun. And some very specific areas and just the beginnings of types of art that we're looking at. So the main areas of focus that the Cultural Arts Commission identified is that east approach near the YMCA. And you'll see there's kind of a cluster of A, B, and C, which is just,
Right there on the corner.
yeah,
On the
It's-
left-hand part, yeah.
yeah. So very visible to traffic coming into Sherwood and lots of vertical and horizontal space, landscape, all kinds of opportunity there that we saw. And then another area of focus, secondary, would be the green space on the west side of the bridge, kind of near the high school. That was also an area of interest.
Is that land owned by the high school, the city?
It'll be the city's, my
Okay.
understanding.
Okay. I was just curious.
And the area that you were talking about is closer to the road, because if not, it's gonna get pretty, I mean, you can see how close it is to the field there.
Right.
My guess is, depending on how much money is allocated towards the project, we're probably gonna use it all up on the other side of the highway, and that could be a future.
I was just curious about like having to deal with like multiple,
Who knows?
getting permission,
I know what it costs.
approval and all that stuff, yeah.
Art can be very expensive.
True.
Well,
Yeah.
depends on what we decide to do, but yeah.
So on the YMCA side, that's about where the sign is right now, is that?
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah, and that's a whole other thing with, certainly with, city is talking with the Y about that, YMCA sign. I don't know where those conversations are going, but
And we are having conversations about that as well, because obviously that sign will have to be relocated. And try to figure out what we can go on the side of the building, which it seems to me would be the most visible. But also that we're probably gonna have to get further along in construction to see where it's really gonna make sense, like we can plan all day and then realize, oh, actually, it's kind of blocked there.
Yeah.
But that will have to be done.
Okay. And this is, we're assuming it would be multi-phase, right? Like,
Depending on what,
Many-
yeah, depending on what we're doing, sure.
So another area of interest to the Cultural Arts Commission were the little belvederes, and they're kind of those little step-out balconies that are made for people to pause, look out on the landscape, step out from the flow of the bridge. And so that seemed like an interesting placemaking opportunity.
I thought that the area essentially on the top of each column.
Yeah, I know what it is. I was gonna say. I thought the discussion with KPF lasted 2 weeks ago at our council meeting was that because of the timeline, that was not an option, at least for phase one, but that something that could be done later, but maybe I misunderstood that.
And I think it depends on what we were to do there. They've said that if it's something such as stamping in the concrete.
Yeah.
Then
We
I
can,
think that's what we're thinking.
Yeah.
We're not talking about putting anything on the structure or anything that's gonna
Yeah.
have a big impact, but if there was a nature thing or words of encouragement, I don't know, whatever it was, that those could be stamped, essentially. And again, at least for the commission, the conversations that they had is they were very interested in that, but we also were giving them the message, the bridge itself is the art, stay away from the bridge, let's focus on the approaches, there's lots of opportunities. So, but they still wanted us to mention that they felt that could be.
But I think we all, when we talked about this a little bit at the meeting, I think we all kind of liked the stamped concrete idea, or at least was consensus that was worth pursuing. So,
I was gonna say, I think that the architecture and the lighting, it seemed like that was also a big part of the aesthetic appeal. I mean, we'll have a philosophical discussion as to whether it's art or not, but it certainly is design and it looks, you know, yeah, it looks beautiful, but, anyway.
Other areas to consider, we just had some discussion about just the location of that ABC or the YMCA, how it's a perfect place for gateway signage, it's gonna be gateway art, it's welcoming people to Sherwood.
So from a theme, do people want welcome to Sherwood kind of theme on that corner? I mean, it's within the city a little ways now, it's not at the edge, but, thoughts?
It's sort of a critical crossing,
It's a major intersection,
Yeah.
without a doubt.
that's what I was trying to say.
And a major
Right,
landmark
right.
thing, which is the bridge.
Right,
I mean, I certainly think that 10, 15 years in the future, that it won't make sense there, right? Because you'll be like, wait a minute, I'm already been in Sherwood. Like, I've been driving through Sherwood for half a mile now, and now I have a welcome to Sherwood sign. But I do think that that's probably for far enough in the future still, that for now, we could put something there. I just think we have to have the thought in mind that we needed something that's either movable to a different location or changeable in its current location to something else, right? Because I don't want to be like, oh, we got this welcome to Sherwood sign, and now because the way we built it or how much we invested in it, that we either have to tear it up and throw it away, or that we're stuck with it, even though it doesn't make sense anymore in 15 years. So as long as we have that eye in the future, then in the future, we may have to move it or replace it with something else. I think that's what.
Well, I think this is just, I mean, this is a placeholder, welcome.
Yeah.
I think the commission was more saying something that denotes,
Yeah,
hey,
Yeah.
here we are.
something, but not welcome to
And
Sherwood.
frankly, I was gonna say, even if you took the welcome to off of it, and it was just Sherwood, and it was
Yeah.
something that was iconic, Instagrammable, you know, all these different things, and you'd be like, well, that doesn't have to be the start of the city, this is just
Acknowledge
an
that this is.
icon of Sherwood, right?
Yeah.
Like the Eiffel Tower
I like
is not at the beginning of Paris, right? You don't have to be like, oh, we gotta do some big dreams.
Yeah.
Make that, no, just kidding.
I'm sure you feel there's no positive. I hope not.
And that's a nice.
Yeah.
A twist on interpretation we get of the thing.
Yeah.
I think kind of when I said 2 weeks ago, the idea of having an imprint of an S on the towers, but from either direction, say, hey, this is Sherwood type of thing. It kind of falls on that point to just say, hey, yep, Sherwood.
Yeah, think of it more placemaking and not boundaries.
I like
Right.
that.
I like
that.
placemaking,
Thank you,
that's a
Taylor.
good,
That makes a lot of sense.
And I think the other feedback we'd be looking for is that something that you want the Cultural Arts Commission to be working on, or does council want to handle that separately?
I would like it to be more on the side of art than on the side of signage,
Okay.
right? And so I feel like the city would do a great job at it being signage. I feel, again, I would be looking for something that is like and I'm not trying to cause accidents at that place, but hey, I would love to take my picture by that, right? You know, or I would love to have a picture, you know, this is a cool thing to see, right? And not, anyway, I know that's a tall order, but I see this as more on the art side than sign.
Great.
So again, just covering like 30,000 foot view themes, these are just some that the commission wanted to share. Things we're thinking along the lines of nature, native plants, native animals whose habitat is around our area, history of the land and town, including native populations were mentioned. And then these last two, clean contemporary lines and modern and fussy, were taking our cues from that gorgeous artistically designed bridge, where it is not a cluttered design, it's eye-catching, but it's clean and timeless. So those are the kind of guiding focuses that.
Thoughts on the themes?
I would say that this supports the kind of information community feedback that the commission worked on last summer when they had feedback from kind of Music on the Green and talked to the community and tried to develop some themes.
Specifically for the bridge, or
Specifically for the bridge.
Yeah, and my only feedback on that is I've seen these done okay and terribly.
Yeah.
Mainly because they fade or they're a color thing that's under a piece of plastic that, and so it really depends on execution in terms of you'll be able to see this for the next 20 years, or, it's not gonna, oh, what does that word say? I can't, and like those kinds of things drive me crazy when I drag my kids to someplace and be like, let's do the interpretive center, and it's like, oh, we can't really, anyway, or it's too many words, so.
Durability is important, for weathering and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Also, like, I think to your point, like, I can think of all the times I stopped at various, wayfinding things and like, not just the wear, but also like somebody comes along and chips off a chunk of something and takes it with them, right? So. Obviously you can't-
Plexiglass.
Yeah, and so.
Yeah.
That's all, we got scratched and fine.
So, yeah, the stamp stuff, I love that. I mean, because frankly, again, I'm thinking back to when I had little kids and it was, it might be fun to see those or dinosaur print or, different things like that I could see as being very engaging and frankly, helping us get across the bridge to the football game or whatever, I mean, it would help on that roads, but I love also incorporating if possible history of the land and town, because, any city in Sherwood can have a beaver or whatever we're gonna be put on it, but we've got some cool history in the town that would be fun and might get some people more interested in that as well. I don't know exactly because you don't want to be like, hey, look over that direction. That's where the tannery used to be and we're spending millions to clean up the bio dump, right? Like that's not what I'm looking for. But,
Well, and it is interesting, just kind of nerding out on concrete art.
yeah,
Lately, the durability and the materials that are available are just so far what they were even 8 years ago.
yeah.
So,
Also, okay, great.
like that on the bottom left that's poured concrete.
Wow.
Wow.
It's really pretty.
Yeah, and this up here is acid etched concrete. And they actually, it's a small part of a whole, they did like the entire Paleozoic, like it's a walkable map, like the earth, like all the eras. It's very interesting. And then the other one is just a close up on, I think it's showing the underground rivers. There's a lot of, I hear you about the durability and I think we all share that focus. It's gotta be clean, it's gotta be timeless, not,
And it, oh, it's of course gonna cost money. We'll get to that,
Yeah.
So still at this, high level thinking of where potential art could be. We also discussed potential art forms. That first one is stone, metal, or concrete art. That's a bench that was done by Ann Stores, who's the woman who did our beautiful library art. Those bas reliefs.
The trees that are around the library.
Yeah, and her art is just beautiful. It's an opportunity to create cohesiveness.
Is she local?
Yeah, she's an Oregon artist.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see the landscape art one at where the Welcome Sherwood was.
So, thank you for that. So the stamped concrete, and of course, you're talking about the Belvedere is mentioned. Again, there's so much that has come up with concrete art, acid etching and all kinds of ways to treat concrete. If you want to do fun deep dive, go for it.
Well, is this from Portland? 'Cause-
No, I think that was from in the Twin Cities. They have a big plaza that's all poetry.
Because Portland has a few like that where they just,
Yeah,
you're
try-
walking along and
yeah.
there's just a cool little saying on the ground. I always go, oh, that's kind of fun to find,
I
right?
think
It's like
someone
a,
did that on some TriMet platforms
yeah,
too.
it's
Yeah,
just an Easter egg or something. I
really
love it.
cool.
And for the Stanford, at least the example of number one, there's a lot of kind of blank vertical space.
Yeah.
Right at that intersection. And
On
so
the
it's really-
YMCA landing area,
Yeah.
So,
huge
we
opportunities.
really wanna
Oh,
do
yeah.
something
Instead
on
of
those walls, because
concrete.
if not, it's just gonna look like this
Horrible.
5-foot concrete.
We don't want
Yeah.
It's like a sculpture in the
Yes.
wall.
Right, exactly.
You know, I'm envisioning something, you know, like that thing on the left, but in a
Yeah.
huge scale with, I mean, you could literally be a mural, a sculpted mural out of concrete.
Right,
yes,
yeah, cool.
Yeah,
And make it interesting stuff.
and if we get the local, the Oregon artists did the city hall too, then there's that, there's cohesiveness. And it could be, it could play really
Huge
well.
opportunity.
And the reason why we're kind of going, or the recommendation is leaning towards stone, metal, and concrete is just, again, the durability. We don't want chipped mosaic or anything that can peel off or fade, so.
Something that's
I don't-
painted.
I was gonna say, don't give up on the landscape art.
Oh, no, that's, okay, so there is, the big theme on the, from
Okay.
the commission on the YMCA landing spaces, it's all this vertical
Oh,
and
right,
hard
right, right.
surface.
Yeah.
type compact space. Then on the other landing is a much larger landscape type, and I'll jump the gun a little bit, but it's the opportunity to use perspective.
Yeah.
So that if you're the pedestrian on the bridge, you can look down, you can look at something in one way. If you're driving by or on the sidewalk of the road, you can see something else, see it a different way.
Yeah.
A key part of that we,
Seeing a side of you I never knew existed.
I know.
When you know, the art commission, I was like, what are you? You're so fun.
Well, yeah, well, by the way, I love something, you know, because what that tells me is that art changes with the season, right?
Exactly.
And with the perspective and the, you know, and again, when you're looking for it, and especially, I mean, depending on the work of art, right? I mean, this one, yeah, I love it.
a very important thing with the landscape art is feedback from staff with maintenance.
Yes, yes.
So what is, how much of it is a living thing,
Yeah.
plant material, and how much of it is art that just is looked at?
Yeah.
It is on the landscape, but it is, looks different from different
Yeah.
places,
And
Well,
there are
or is
landscape,
only visible from above, or is.
and that's where we want to eventually get a landscape artist who that's their specialty. And
Yeah.
know Oregon native plants and know that
Because
we
it's
can
a- it's a
say,
really
no
cool
one's gonna touch it for 15 years.
Yeah, and by the way, could you, I know you guys are experts in this, I would include in that, the Catholic Church has labyrinths, in fact, a lot of cultures do where they're walkable, they're just essentially pavers in patterns that are, and it's one of those things that, again, looks cool from up above, is fun to walk, meditative, all the other stuff, and it also can be mowed over with a big lawnmower, right? So it does not, you know, so it's things like that where you go, oh, yeah, that's really cool to be able to walk along the labyrinth of Oregon or what, I don't know.
And then we didn't put it on here, but I mentioned it, I mean, we kind of ranked it here or someplace. The potential somewhere on that side is the growth of young adults. So stealing an idea from Linfield, where I grew up, where they have various statues of people and they're very rough honed, you know, can't identify they're a figure. And then as they're maturing, they're getting older, they're becoming more refined. There are different genders, different ethnicities. But it's like, wow, okay, these young people are becoming adults and a reflection of the high school.
I like the idea too of that area being not just something you look at, but something interactive, right? That you can walk around in. I don't know, and that could take on many different forms, you know, giant chessboard. I mean, you know, there's all kinds of ideas around it being, you know, an interactive space and just, you know, something to look at.
Yeah, there's ample opportunity for forced perspective art or art that is meant to stop you while you're on the bridge and go, oh, I'm seeing from up above what I didn't notice.
I think you guys are on the right.
Good. Awesome. It's definitely exciting. So the recommendations from the Cultural Arts Commission are things that we just discussed with that primary focus on the side of the YMCA, because that's a big, just geographically large and artistically opportunity filled.
And a lot of hardscape.
And very visible, yeah. And then recommending also to consider adding art elements to the Belvedere's, and I know that has a time constraint. And then recommending incorporate gateway signage, just like we talked about, something that either says Sherwood or denotes Sherwood. Secondary focus is that art, landscape, site-based, perspective-based on the other side. And then asking to dedicate 250 to 350,000.
I think we'll
Come
come
up with that.
Well, that's a good question, but I guess we just need some parameters.
Right.
You say,
Well, yeah,
money's
but
no
everything else to
optics,
do, or-
then we can definitely.
So my thought would
something,
be,
but-
I think if we considered it as like, you know, a multi-year phasing kind of thing, and I think phase one, if we focus really on that land area around the YMCA and then this concrete, we're gonna have to fill the ramp and all that stuff, right? Let's figure out what we wanna do there and what it would cost. That, I think, more could inform the budget versus vice versa, and then you could look at, and also I think if we're gonna do any stamp concrete on the bridge surface itself, obviously that has to be in the first phase budget, but then I think Belvedere's, the other area on the other side over by the high school can all be like year 2, year 3 kind of things, and gives you longer time to figure out what that looks like, so you can kind of do work in phases, and also we can budget for it in phases. So that'd be my.
In my mind. We know we have to build that hardscape on the corner of the Y, so let's do it right. Thought and energy in that, and whatever stamp stuff we do on the bridge surface.
Yeah.
And then just don't cause problems on the
Yeah.
west side landing.
So, and there was an idea that might make our money go a little further in one of those sections that's closer to the school. We were looking at the school, that little, when you walk into the school, there's that sunken area over to the left. And initially we were like, well, let's have a pad there that we can put some of the 3D art or sculptures done by the students there. And part of me is thinking, can that be well, we're going to put up, this year is a student sculpture from, because it was designed to be like, 10-foot sculptures, right? And so it's like, okay, great. The city will pay for the pad and the ability to anchor it down, but the actual artwork will come from, the students or something, is there a creative way to do that where it is, it's a partnership with the school for less money, right?
Yeah.
I guess I thought about that space differently. I thought it would be more like a rotation space, that they'd be able to rotate artwork.
Right, they were gonna do that on that drop down area. As far as I can tell, they never did that. And so that's why I'm
It's the
saying,
space, it's
for us, while we're saying, hey, we're not gonna be able to fill in art for 5 years, or whatever our 5-year, you don't know what place that is? So as you're walking in the main school entrance, there's like a it goes down in the CRT and the welding.
So it's on
CP.
school property?
It's that's on school property, but what I'm saying is, because they didn't do that, is there an opportunity for us to say, in that area that's over kind of.
We'll build you a space, you can display your.
Yeah, we'll put a pad there because we don't know what's gonna go there for the next 5 years, because we haven't budgeted for it. But we'll put the pad there and we can put art there. I'm just saying, let's think outside the box of, is there a way to do that would also,
That'd be an honor.
yeah.
I was gonna say that, like, anything is possible. I
Yeah.
mean, we have our neighbors in Lake Oswego, that's what they do, is they do sculptures and a rotating
Yeah.
outdoor gallery. So, I mean, it would be a partnership that would be big.
That might be
Yeah.
a good CEP grant or, something, a different project, just for.
Right.
That would definitely.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is that we would be providing the stage for it essentially, and then we would say, you know, the different organizations can apply for that grant. You get the, you know, the school could do it, or,
I would say we can get the grant to build the space.
oh,
Right.
there we go, all right. Done.
There's a lot of really motivated art students.
So are we on the right track?
Yes.
I think so. It
Well
all
done.
looks great, and you've got plenty of opinions from everybody, including me.
I love it.
All right, we're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Talk about it all day. I don't know.
Anytime.
Who's voting?
We're, we have a